In the vast expanse of the galaxy, where alien civilizations have dominated space for millennia, humanity was considered nothing more than a curiosity, a young species barely worth notice. The Galactic Council's records showed humans as peaceful traders, quiet diplomats, and unremarkable settlers who preferred isolation to conflict. They were wrong. What they didn't know was that some humans carried secrets buried so deep that even they had forgotten what lay dormant within their genetic code. Secrets that would only surface when everything they held dear faced annihilation. This is the story of Maya Chen, a cargo hauler who spent her days moving supplies between frontier stations, speaking only when necessary, keeping her head down, and avoiding trouble at all costs. To everyone who knew her, she was just another quiet human trying to make an honest living in a galaxy that barely acknowledged her species' existence. But, when an ancient evil awakened and began consuming entire star systems, when the mightiest warrior races fell like wheat before the scythe, when the very fabric of galactic civilization started to unravel, that's when Maya's true nature would finally be revealed. Because sometimes, the greatest weapons are hidden in the most unassuming packages. And, sometimes, salvation comes from those who never wanted to fight at all. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, their numbers, or their diplomacy. It was their ability to become something utterly terrifying when pushed too far. Maya Chen was about to remind the universe why humans were never meant to be underestimated. The freight hauler Wandering Star drifted silently through the void between Nexus Station and the Outer Rim territories, its cargo hold filled with medical supplies, food rations, and farming equipment bound for the struggling colonies on Kepler 442b. Maya Chen sat in the pilot's chair, her dark eyes fixed on the star charts displayed across the main console, calculating fuel consumption and trade routes with the methodical precision that had kept her alive and profitable for the past 8 years. At 29, Maya had the weathered hands of someone who had spent her entire adult life working with machinery, and the quiet demeanor of someone who had learned that speaking only when necessary was the best way to avoid trouble. Her black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the same gray jumpsuit she had been wearing for the past 3 days, practical, unremarkable, forgettable. The communication array crackled to life, interrupting her calculations. Freight vessel Wandering Star, this is Nexus Station Control. Please respond. Maya reached forward and activated the transmitter. This is Wandering Star. Maya Chen speaking. Ms. Chen, we have an urgent freight request. High priority cargo bound for the Tau Ceti system. Payment is triple standard rates, but the cargo must be delivered within 72 hours. Are you available? Maya frowned. Triple rates usually meant dangerous cargo or dangerous destinations. The Tau Ceti system was on the edge of HFY territory, and the insectoid HFY weren't known for their friendly attitudes toward humans. Still, triple rates would keep her ship running for 6 months and maybe allow her to finally upgrade her failing life support systems. What's the cargo? She asked. Scientific equipment and data cores. Research station on Tau Ceti 3 went dark 3 days ago. The science team needs emergency supplies and backup data to continue their work. Maya's fingers drummed against the control panel. Research stations didn't just go dark. Especially not in HFY space. But the money was too good to pass up, and she had always prided herself on completing every job she accepted. I'll take it. Transmitting my docking coordinates now. 2 hours later, Maya stood in the cargo bay of Nexus Station, watching as loading mechs transferred sealed containers into her ship's hold. The containers were unmarked except for biohazard symbols and what appeared to be research station identification codes. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a woman in her 50s with prematurely gray hair and nervous eyes, supervised the loading process. The cargo is extremely sensitive, Dr. Vasquez explained, her voice tight with anxiety. Some of the data cores contain years of research that cannot be replaced. And, the biological samples, they must be kept at exactly -40 degrees Celsius, no variation. Maya nodded, making a note on her data pad. My cargo hold has independent climate controls. Your samples will be fine. But, I have to ask, what happened to the research station? Dr. Vasquez glanced around nervously, as if checking to make sure they weren't being overheard. We lost contact 3 days ago. No distress signal, no warning. Just silence. The last transmission was routine, a daily status report. everything was normal. Pirates? Maya asked, though she knew the Kethvar were too territorial to allow pirates in their space. We don't know. That's why this cargo is so important. If something did happen to the station, this research data might be the only thing left of 15 years of work. Maya secured the final container and ran through her pre-flight checklist. The cargo was valuable enough to make her nervous, but she had handled sensitive shipments before. The key was to keep a low profile, avoid contact with other ships, and complete the delivery as quickly as possible. As the wandering star pulled away from Nexus Station, Maya plotted a course that would take her around the edge of Kethvar territory rather than through it. The route would add an extra day to the journey, but it would also minimize the chance of encountering hostile aliens who viewed humans as inferior creatures barely worthy of existence. The first day of the journey passed without incident. Maya spent her time monitoring ship systems, reviewing star charts, and catching up on maintenance tasks that she had been putting off. She ate her meals alone in the small galley, read technical manuals in her cramped quarters, and maintained the same quiet routine that had defined her life for the past 8 years. She had always been a loner. Even as a child growing up on Earth's orbital colonies, Maya had preferred the company of machines to people. While other children played games and formed friendships, she had spent her time learning how to repair environmental systems, study stellar mechanics, and dream of the day when she would have her own ship and could travel wherever she wanted without depending on anyone else. Her parents had died in a shipping accident when she was 16, leaving her with enough insurance money to buy a small freight hauler and the determination to never again depend on anyone for her survival. For 13 years, that philosophy had served her well. She completed her contracts, maintained her ship, and avoided entanglements that might complicate her simple existence. But, as the wandering star continued its journey toward Tau Ceti, Maya began to notice something unusual. Her ship's long-range sensors were detecting debris fields that shouldn't have been there, twisted metal fragments that looked like the remains of destroyed vessels floating in space where her charts showed empty vacuum. At first, she assumed it was old wreckage from some long-forgotten conflict. Space was full of debris from wars fought centuries ago, and her sensors weren't sophisticated enough to distinguish between old wreckage and fresh destruction. But, as she continued along her route, the debris fields became more frequent and more extensive. On the second day, Maya's sensors detected something that made her blood run cold. Floating in the debris field ahead of her was the twisted wreckage of a Kethvar battlecruiser, one of the most powerful warships in known space. The massive vessel had been torn apart with such violence that its armored hull had been split into dozens of pieces, its weapons systems melted into slag, and its crew compartments vented to space. Maya had never seen destruction on such a scale. Kethvar battlecruisers were nearly indestructible, protected by energy shields and armor plating that could withstand direct hits from planetary defense systems. Whatever had destroyed this ship possessed firepower beyond anything in the known galaxy. She modified her course to avoid the wreckage, but her sensors continued to detect similar debris fields along her planned route. Destroyed ships from multiple species, Kethvar, Vorthan, Zilani, and others, all torn apart with the same savage efficiency. Whatever was causing this destruction was moving through the galaxy like a plague, leaving nothing but twisted metal and death in its wake. Maya's hands began to shake as she realized the implications. If entire battle fleets were being destroyed, what chance did a single research station have? And what hope did one small freight hauler have of reaching its destination safely? She considered turning back, but Dr. Vasquez's words echoed in her mind. 15 years of research would be lost forever if she didn't complete this delivery. And, somewhere in the Tau Ceti system, there might be survivors who desperately needed the supplies and equipment she was carrying. Maya had never thought of herself as brave, but she had always been stubborn. Once she accepted a job, she completed it, regardless of the risks. That determination had kept her alive and successful for 8 years, and she wasn't about to abandon it now. She increased her ship's speed and began monitoring all communication frequencies, hoping to pick up some indication of what was happening in the systems ahead. For hours, she heard nothing but static and the distant hum of cosmic radiation. Then, just as she was beginning to think that the entire sector had been abandoned, her communication array picked up a weak distress signal. The signal was heavily distorted and intermittent, but Maya's computer was able to enhance it enough to make out fragments of the message. Under attack, unknown vessels, requesting immediate assistance, coordinates. The transmission ended abruptly, replaced by static. Maya plotted the source of the distress signal and felt her heart sink. It was coming from the direction of Tau Ceti 3, exactly where she was supposed to make her delivery. Whatever had destroyed those battle fleets was now attacking the research station. For a long moment, Maya stared at the navigation display, weighing her options. She could turn back to Nexus Station, return the cargo, and accept the loss of her payment. It would be the sensible thing to do. The safe thing to do. No one would blame her for refusing to fly into what was obviously a war zone. But, as she reached for the navigation controls, something stopped her. Maybe it was stubbornness, or professional pride, or some deeper instinct she didn't understand. Whatever it was, Maya found herself unable to change course. Instead, she increased her ship's speed and began preparing for whatever she might find in the Tau Ceti system. The wandering star continued its journey through the void, carrying its lone pilot toward a destiny that neither Maya nor anyone else in the galaxy could have imagined. Behind her, the debris fields of destroyed civilizations drifted silently through space, testament to a power that defied comprehension. Ahead of her, the Tau Ceti system waited in ominous silence, holding secrets that would change everything Maya thought she knew about herself and her place in the universe. As the hours passed and the star Tau Ceti grew brighter on her forward displays, Maya Chen maintained her quiet vigil in the pilot's chair, unaware that she was about to become the focal point of a conflict that would determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. She was just a freight hauler, trying to complete one more delivery in a career built on simple, unremarkable transactions. She had no way of knowing that within her DNA lay the dormant legacy of humanity's forgotten past, or that the approaching battle would awaken abilities that her species had deliberately hidden from the rest of the galaxy. All she knew was that somewhere ahead, people needed help, and she was the only one in position to provide it. The quiet life she had built for herself was about to end forever. The Tau Ceti system materialized on Maya's forward displays like a vision from a nightmare. Where her charts showed 3 inhabited planets, a mining station, and regular shipping traffic, she found only destruction and silence. Tau Ceti 2, once home to a thriving colony of 2 million beings, was now a blackened sphere surrounded by the twisted remains of orbital habitats and defense platforms. The mining station that should have been processing asteroids in the outer system had been reduced to scattered debris that formed a glittering cloud of metal fragments. Maya's sensors detected no life signs, no active transmissions, no indication that anything had survived whatever had swept through this system. She adjusted her course toward Tau Ceti 3, where the research station should have been located, but her instruments showed only more wreckage floating in high orbit around the planet. As she approached the coordinates where the research station had been built, Maya's breath caught in her throat. The station itself was gone, reduced to fragments no larger than her ship, but floating among the debris was something that made no sense. Massive structures of unknown design drifted through space, geometric shapes that seemed to shift and change as she watched them, composed of some dark material that absorbed her sensor beams instead of reflecting them. The structures were clearly artificial, but they followed no design principles that Maya recognized. They had no obvious propulsion systems, no visible weapons, no communication arrays or docking ports. They simply existed, silent and motionless, like monuments to some incomprehensible purpose. Maya activated her ship's recording systems and began documenting everything she could see. If she managed to survive this encounter, the data might be valuable to whoever was fighting these unknown attackers. She enhanced her sensor resolution and began scanning the nearest structure, trying to determine what it was made of and how it functioned. The results made no sense. Her sensors detected matter, but it was organized in patterns that defied physical laws. The structure seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, its mass shifting and fluctuating in ways that should have been impossible. Maya's computer systems struggled to process the data, generating error messages and warnings about sensor malfunctions. While she was trying to understand what she was seeing, Maya's proximity alarm suddenly activated. Something was approaching her ship, something large and fast. Her display showed a contact moving toward her at tremendous speed, but when she tried to get a visual lock on it, her cameras showed only empty space. Maya's hands flew over her control panel, bringing her ship's limited defensive systems online and preparing to execute an emergency jump to hyperspace. But, before she could activate her jump drive, the invisible contact stopped directly in front of her ship, and Maya's world exploded into chaos. Every system on the wandering star began malfunctioning simultaneously. Her engines shut down without warning, her navigation computers crashed, and her life support systems began cycling through emergency protocols. The lights flickered and dimmed, and the constant hum of her ship's systems was replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the sound of Maya's own breathing. Through her forward viewport, Maya saw something that would haunt her for the rest of her life. The empty space in front of her ship began to ripple and distort, as if reality itself was bending. Colors that had no names bled through the distortion, and shapes that hurt to look at directly writhed in the darkness. Then, with a sound like reality tearing apart, something emerged from the void. The thing that appeared before Maya's ship defied description. It was roughly the size of a small asteroid, but its surface seemed to be composed of flowing darkness that absorbed all light. Tendrils of the same dark material extended from its core like the arms of some cosmic octopus, each tendril moving with purpose and intelligence. Where the tendrils touched the wreckage of the research station, the debris simply disappeared, consumed by the darkness without leaving any trace. Maya's ship shuddered as some invisible force began scanning it from bow to stern. Her hull plating groaned under stress, and warning lights flashed across every control panel. Through her helmet radio, Maya could hear her ship's computer systems screaming electronic protests as the unknown force invaded her databases and examined every byte of information stored in her memory banks. The invasion lasted only seconds, but it felt like hours. When it ended, Maya found herself staring into something that might have been eyes, pinpoints of red light that burned in the creature's dark mass like dying stars. She felt its attention focus on her with the weight of a collapsing planet, examining her not just physically but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Then, impossibly, it spoke. Not through her communication system, but directly into her mind, bypassing her ears entirely and placing words directly into her consciousness in a voice that sounded like the death of civilizations. Human, the voice said, and Maya felt ice form in her veins. Interesting. We did not expect to find one of your kind here. Maya tried to respond, but her voice wouldn't work. Terror had frozen her vocal cords and left her gasping for breath. All she could do was stare into those burning red eyes and wait for whatever was going to happen next. Your species is not catalogued in the minds we have consumed, the voice continued. You are unknown to us. This presents a problem. Maya's ship shuddered again as more of the creatures materialized around her. Dozens of them, each one slightly different in size and configuration but all composed of the same flowing darkness. They moved through space without apparent propulsion, defying physics in ways that made Maya's scientific training rebel against what she was seeing. We are the Devourers, the voice explained, as if answering Maya's unspoken questions. We consume civilizations. We absorb knowledge, technology, biological information, and cultural achievements. We have done this for millions of your years, across thousands of galaxies. We are the end of all things. Maya's mind reeled as the implications hit her. These creatures weren't just attackers or invaders, they were a galactic plague, moving from system to system and consuming everything in their path. Every civilization they encountered became part of them, adding to their knowledge and power while leaving nothing behind but empty space. But you, the voice continued, and Maya felt its attention focus on her even more intensely. You are something new. Something we have not encountered before. Your genetic structure is unusual. There are patterns in your DNA that suggest capabilities far beyond what your current development would indicate. Maya's scientific training kicked in despite her terror. The creature was analyzing her on a molecular level, studying her genetic code with technology so advanced that it could examine individual chromosomes from a distance. But what did it mean by capabilities beyond her development? Your species is young, the Devourer explained. According to the minds we have consumed, humans have been spacefaring for less than 300 of your years. Yet your genetic structure suggests a much older heritage. There are locked sequences in your DNA, dormant genes that appear to have been deliberately suppressed. Maya found her voice at last, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. What do you mean? Your ancestors, the creature replied, were not as peaceful as you believe. The genetic markers we detect suggest that humans once possessed abilities that would have made them formidable adversaries. These abilities were somehow locked away, hidden even from your own species' memory. Why would a race deliberately cripple itself? Maya's mind struggled to process what the creature was saying. Hidden abilities? Locked genetic sequences? It sounded like science fiction, but the Devourers clearly had technology and knowledge far beyond anything in the known galaxy. If they said humans had hidden genetic potential, they were probably right. We are curious, the Devourer continued. We will conduct an experiment. We will awaken these dormant genes and observe what happens. If the results are interesting, we may spare your species long enough to study them further. If not, the creature's tendrils writhed in what might have been the equivalent of a shrug. You will become part of us, as all others have. Before Maya could protest or ask questions, one of the creature's tendrils lashed out and struck her ship's hull. The impact sent shockwaves through the wandering star's structure, but instead of damaging the vessel, the tendril seemed to phase through the metal plating as if it wasn't there. Maya felt the tendrils touch like ice water flowing through her veins. Something alien and incomprehensible invaded her cellular structure, examining her DNA and making subtle adjustments to sequences that had been locked away for millennia. The process was agonizing, not physically painful, but mentally overwhelming as dormant neural pathways suddenly activated and her consciousness expanded in ways she couldn't understand. Images flashed through her mind, memories that weren't hers, knowledge that came from somewhere beyond her own experience. She saw humans in battles across the stars, wielding weapons and technologies that didn't exist in any current database. She saw ships that moved faster than light without using conventional hyperdrives, powered by human will and genetic potential instead of mechanical engines. She saw warriors who could survive in the vacuum of space without protection, who could heal from injuries that would kill ordinary beings, who could manipulate energy with their bare hands and communicate across vast distances without technology. She saw a human civilization that had once spanned galaxies, exploring and protecting rather than conquering, serving as guardians for younger species throughout the universe. And she saw why it had all been hidden. The power was too much for most humans to handle. Those who couldn't control their abilities became monsters, destroying everything they touched. Those who could control them became gods, losing their humanity in the process. So the decision was made: lock away the dangerous genes, suppress the abilities, and let humanity develop naturally as a peaceful species. But the locks were designed to be temporary. When humanity faced extinction, when the very survival of the species was threatened, the dormant genes would activate automatically. The Guardians would return. Maya's transformation lasted only minutes, but when it ended, she was no longer the same person who had started this journey 3 days ago. She could feel power flowing through her body like electricity, could sense the quantum fluctuations that held the universe together, could perceive dimensions of reality that had been invisible to her before. The devourer that had touched her pulled back its tendril and examined her with renewed interest. Fascinating, it said. Your species' potential exceeds our projections. You are now operating at approximately 15% of your genetic capabilities, yet your power levels are already substantial. We will observe your performance in combat situations. More devourers began materializing around Maya's ship, dozens, then hundreds, their dark forms blocking out the stars. Maya realized with growing horror that they intended to use her as some kind of test subject, forcing her to fight while they studied her newly awakened abilities. But, as she stared at the creatures surrounding her ship, Maya felt something she had never experienced before. Instead of fear or desperation, she felt anger. Pure, focused rage at these beings who had consumed entire civilizations, who treated living beings as nothing more than experimental subjects, who destroyed everything beautiful and unique in the galaxy simply to satisfy their curiosity. The anger built inside her like a nuclear reactor approaching critical mass, and with it came the knowledge of how to use her new abilities. Her consciousness expanded beyond the confines of her ship, reaching out to touch the quantum fields that connected all matter in the universe. She could feel the devourer's alien thoughts, cold and calculating, devoid of any emotion except hunger for knowledge and consumption. Maya's hands moved to her ship's control panel, but she wasn't using conventional controls anymore. Instead, she interfaced directly with the wandering star's systems, her consciousness merging with the ship's computer and extending her awareness throughout the vessel. She felt every circuit, every power conduit, every structural support as if they were part of her own body. The cargo hold, she realized, contained more than just research equipment and biological samples. Dr. Vasquez had been telling the truth about 15 years of research, but she hadn't mentioned what that research was focused on. Maya's enhanced senses could now detect the true nature of the cargo, genetic samples and data files related to humanity's hidden heritage. The research station hadn't been studying alien biology. They had been studying human evolution, trying to unlock the same genetic sequences that the Devourers had just activated in Maya. The scientists had discovered the truth about humanity's past and had been working to safely restore their species' hidden abilities. Maya's rage intensified as she realized that the Devourers had destroyed 15 years of careful, ethical research and murdered innocent scientists who had been trying to help their own species. They had casually erased knowledge and lives as if they meant nothing, treating sentient beings as disposable resources. The power building inside Maya reached a critical threshold, and she felt her consciousness expand even further. She was no longer just Maya Chen, small-time freight hauler. She was something more, a guardian, a protector, a weapon forged by evolution to defend humanity and its allies against exactly this kind of threat. The Devourers had made a critical error in judgment. They had assumed that awakening Maya's abilities would make her an interesting subject for study. Instead, they had created their own nemesis. Maya's eyes blazed with inner fire as she prepared to show these cosmic predators what humanity was truly capable of when pushed too far. Maya's transformation into something beyond ordinary human limits continued as power flowed through her consciousness like liquid fire. She could feel every atom in her body restructuring itself, could sense quantum particles dancing to patterns written into her genes millions of years ago. The genetic locks that had kept humanity's true potential hidden were opening one by one, revealing capabilities that made the Devourers' technology seem primitive by comparison. The alien entities surrounding her ship noticed the change immediately. Their flowing forms pulsed with anticipation as they detected the energy building within the small freight vessel. To them, Maya was becoming an increasingly interesting specimen, a chance to study abilities they had never encountered before. The transformation is proceeding faster than anticipated, the lead Devourer communicated, its voice still echoing directly in Maya's mind. Your genetic activation is cascading beyond the initial sequence we unlocked. Curious. Your species appears to have multiple layers of dormant potential. Maya ignored the creature's clinical observations and focused on the flood of new knowledge filling her consciousness. Memories that weren't her own continued to surface, fragments of humanity's forgotten history that painted a picture of her species' true heritage. She saw ancient humans working alongside other races as protectors and peacekeepers, their unique abilities making them ideal guardians for developing civilizations. She witnessed the great debates that led to the genetic locks, the painful decision to sacrifice power in favor of wisdom and compassion. But she also saw what happened when the locks were removed in times of desperate need. Humans who became living weapons, capable of feats that defied physics and challenged the natural order of the universe. Warriors who could step between dimensions, healers who could resurrect the dead, builders who could create matter from pure energy. The Guardians had been more than just protectors, they had been the universe's immune system, appearing whenever existential threats emerged to consume or destroy entire civilizations. The Devourers represented exactly the kind of threat the Guardian protocols had been designed to counter. Maya's enhanced senses suddenly detected something that made her newly awakened instincts scream in alarm. The research data she was carrying wasn't just academic information about human genetics, it contained active samples of the unlocking sequences, biological keys that could remove the genetic restrictions from any human who came into contact with them. The Devourers had been examining her cargo during their initial scan, studying the data and samples while they decided whether to consume or experiment on her. If these creatures gained access to humanity's genetic unlocking mechanisms, they could transform the entire species into test subjects for their amusement. Billions of humans could be turned into unwilling experiments, their awakened abilities studied and catalogued before they were ultimately consumed and added to the Devourers' collective knowledge. The thought filled Maya with a rage so pure and focused that the space around her ship began to distort. Her consciousness expanded beyond her vessel, reaching out through dimensions she was only beginning to understand. She could feel the quantum substrate that connected all matter in the universe, could perceive the fundamental forces that held reality together. The wandering star shuddered as Maya's awakened abilities began to interfere with its conventional systems. Her pilot's chair cracked under the pressure of energies her body was unconsciously channeling, and the air in the cabin began to shimmer with barely contained power. But, instead of damaging her ship, Maya found herself instinctively adapting its systems to work in harmony with her new capabilities. Her consciousness merged more fully with the vessel's computer network, transforming the simple freight hauler into an extension of her own will. The ship's engines evolved beyond their mechanical limitations, drawing power directly from Maya's genetic potential instead of conventional fuel. Its hull plating shifted at a molecular level, becoming something that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The transformation was visible to the Devourers, who watched with growing excitement as the small human ship became something unprecedented in their millions of years of experience. They had consumed countless civilizations, absorbed the knowledge and technology of thousands of species, but they had never encountered anything that could spontaneously evolve beyond their understanding. Remarkable, the lead Devourer commented, its attention focused entirely on Maya's ship. Your vessel is adapting to your awakened state. This suggests that human technology has always been designed with this potential in mind, even though your current civilization has forgotten how to access it. Maya felt the truth of that observation as her consciousness continued to merge with her ship's systems. The wandering star had been built by humans who unconsciously incorporated design elements that would only function when piloted by someone with awakened genetic capabilities. Every human ship, every piece of human technology, contained dormant potential that was activated by contact with unlocked genetic sequences. Humanity hadn't just hidden their own abilities, they had hidden the true capabilities of everything they built. The implications were staggering. Every human colony, every space station, every piece of equipment scattered across the galaxy was a sleeping weapon waiting to be awakened by the right genetic key. The Devourers had unknowingly unlocked an arsenal that spanned hundreds of star systems. Maya's rage crystallized into cold determination as she realized the scope of the threat and the responsibility that had been thrust upon her. She was no longer just trying to survive an encounter with hostile aliens. She had become humanity's first line of defense against an enemy that could destroy their entire species if they gained access to the genetic data she was carrying. The cargo in her hold couldn't be allowed to fall into the Devourer's hands. More importantly, these creatures couldn't be allowed to continue their rampage through the galaxy, consuming civilizations and treating sentient life as raw material for their experiments. Maya's consciousness expanded even further, reaching beyond her ship to touch the wreckage floating around them. The destroyed research station still contained intact data cores, backup information that the Devourers hadn't yet had time to absorb. With her new abilities, Maya could access those data cores directly, downloading terabytes of information about humanity's genetic heritage and the research that had been conducted here. What she found changed everything. The research station hadn't just been studying human genetics, they had been monitoring Devourer movements across the galaxy for the past 5 years. The scientists had detected the pattern of destroyed civilizations and had correctly identified the approaching threat. They had been racing to unlock humanity's guardian protocols before the Devourers reached human space. Dr. Elena Vasquez hadn't been fleeing with research data. She had been trying to deliver a weapon. The biological samples in Maya's cargo hold contained enough genetic unlocking sequences to awaken every human in the galaxy simultaneously. The plan had been to distribute the samples through the water supplies of every human colony, triggering a species-wide activation that would restore humanity's role as galactic guardians just in time to face the Devourer threat. But the research station had been discovered and destroyed before the plan could be implemented. Maya was now carrying humanity's only hope for survival in her cargo hold, and she was surrounded by the very enemies the weapon had been designed to defeat. The irony wasn't lost on her. The Devourers had accidentally activated the Guardian who was carrying the key to their own destruction. Maya's transformation reached a new threshold as her consciousness integrated fully with her ship and began reaching out to touch nearby space itself. She could feel the quantum fluctuations that held atoms together, could perceive the dimensional boundaries that separated different layers of reality. Her human DNA was interfacing with forces that existed outside normal spacetime, drawing energy from sources that conventional science couldn't even detect. The devourers sensed the change and began moving closer, their forms shifting and adapting as they prepared to harvest Maya's evolved state for study. Dozens of tendrils extended toward her ship, each one designed to phase through matter and extract biological information directly from living tissue. But Maya was no longer entirely biological. Her consciousness existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, her awareness spanning quantum states that the devourers couldn't fully perceive or comprehend. When their tendrils reached her ship, they passed through empty space where she appeared to be but actually touched nothing at all. Impossible, the lead devourer communicated, confusion evident in its alien thoughts. The human is existing in quantum superposition. She is both present and absent simultaneously. Maya smiled as she felt her abilities stabilizing at their new level. She was learning to control her awakened state, to consciously direct the power flowing through her genetic structure. The knowledge contained in her ancestors' memories was becoming accessible, teaching her techniques that had been perfected over millions of years of guardian service. She began to understand what she had become. Not just a human with enhanced abilities, but a living bridge between dimensions, capable of existing in multiple realities at once. She could phase through matter, manipulate energy at a quantum level, and interface directly with the fundamental forces that governed the universe. The devourers had created their own nemesis. Maya's consciousness reached out to the cargo in her hold, interfacing directly with the genetic samples contained in the research containers. With her new abilities, she could modify and enhance the unlocking sequences, making them more stable and easier for ordinary humans to absorb. She could also transmit the sequences directly through quantum entanglement, bypassing the need for physical distribution. Every human in the galaxy could be awakened simultaneously, restored to their guardian heritage in an instant. But, first, she needed to deal with the immediate threat. The devourers surrounding her ship represented just a small fraction of their total force, but they were still powerful enough to destroy entire star systems. If they were allowed to escape and report back to their main fleet, humanity's moment of surprise would be lost. Maya's consciousness focused on the quantum substrate connecting all matter in the local area. She could feel the devourers' dark energy, their alien thought patterns, their incomprehensible hunger for consumption and destruction. They were creatures from outside normal spacetime, existing in dimensions that didn't follow the same physical laws as the rest of the universe. That made them vulnerable in ways they didn't understand. Maya's awareness shifted to a quantum frequency that allowed her to perceive the dimensional boundaries the devourers used to phase through normal matter. She could see the exotic energy patterns they used to exist in multiple realities simultaneously, the alien mathematics that governed their ability to consume entire civilizations. And she could see how to disrupt those patterns. Maya's ship began to glow with an inner light that had nothing to do with conventional technology. The wandering star was becoming something unprecedented, a vessel that existed in harmony with awakened human consciousness, powered by genetic potential that had been locked away for millions of years. The devourers recognized the threat too late. As Maya's abilities reached full activation, she became something they had never encountered in their vast experience consuming civilizations across multiple galaxies. She became their natural predator. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin, and Maya Chen was no longer the quiet freight hauler who had accepted a simple delivery contract 4 days ago. She was the first guardian to awaken in millions of years, carrying the genetic key that would restore her entire species to their true heritage. The galaxy was about to rediscover why humans had once been feared and respected as the universe's ultimate protectors. Maya's consciousness expanded beyond anything she had ever imagined possible as the final genetic locks dissolved and her true heritage blazed to life. She could perceive reality on levels that had no names in human language, quantum dimensions where thought became matter, temporal streams where cause and effect flowed backward, energy frequencies that connected every living thing in the universe through invisible threads of consciousness. The devourers surrounding her ship suddenly seemed small and limited, their vaunted power revealed as crude manipulation of forces they didn't truly understand. Maya could see through their dimensional phasing abilities, could perceive the exotic matter they used to consume entire civilizations, could trace the alien mathematics that allowed them to exist outside normal spacetime. More importantly, she could see their weaknesses. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years were parasites, feeding on the life energy and accumulated knowledge of other species without creating anything of their own. They were powerful, but their power was borrowed, stolen from countless civilizations they had consumed. They had never encountered a species that could match their abilities through natural evolution. Maya's ship began to change as her consciousness fully integrated with its systems. The wandering star had been designed by humans who unconsciously incorporated technology that would only activate when touched by awakened genetic potential. Every circuit, every structural component, every piece of equipment had dormant capabilities that were now coming online. The freight hauler's simple hull plating shifted at a molecular level, becoming something that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Its conventional engines evolved into drives that drew power directly from quantum fluctuations in spacetime. Its basic sensor array transformed into instruments capable of perceiving realities that normal matter couldn't even touch. But the most dramatic change was in Maya herself. Her human form remained the same, but her consciousness now spanned multiple dimensional layers. She could feel the thoughts and emotions of every living being within 100 light-years, could perceive the quantum entanglements that connected all matter in the universe, could tap into energy sources that existed outside the normal flow of time. She had become what her ancestors were always meant to be, a guardian capable of protecting entire civilizations from existential threats. The lead devourer attempted to extend its tendrils toward Maya's transformed ship, but the dark appendages passed harmlessly through empty space. Maya was no longer existing entirely in normal reality. She had learned to phase between dimensions at will, making herself untouchable while remaining capable of affecting the physical world. Fascinating, the creature communicated, its alien thoughts betraying the first hint of uncertainty Maya had detected. Your quantum state is stabilizing at frequencies we cannot directly access. This presents an unexpected challenge. Maya felt a cold smile cross her face as she realized the full implications of what she had become. The Devourers had spent millions of years consuming civilizations that existed entirely within normal spacetime. They had developed tactics and abilities designed to overwhelm species that were limited to three-dimensional reality and conventional physics. They had never faced guardians who could fight them on their own dimensional playing field. Maya's consciousness reached out to touch the quantum substrate connecting all matter in the local area. She could feel the Devourer's alien presence like a disease infecting reality itself, dark patterns of consumption and destruction that left emptiness wherever they passed. Each creature was connected to a vast network spanning multiple galaxies, sharing knowledge and experiences across distances that should have made communication impossible. The network was their greatest strength, allowing them to coordinate attacks and share the accumulated knowledge of every civilization they had consumed. But Maya could see how to turn that strength into a weakness. Her awareness expanded along the quantum threads that connected the Devourers to their network, following the alien communication pathways back to their source. What she found made her rage burn even hotter. Thousands of Devourer fleets scattered across the galaxy, each one methodically consuming everything in its path. Billions of sentient beings dying while these creatures studied their suffering and added their final moments to an ever-growing database of conquered civilizations. But Maya also detected something else, a pattern in the Devourers' movements that suggested they weren't just randomly consuming civilizations. They were searching for something specific, following clues that led them from one destroyed world to another. The path of destruction through the galaxy wasn't chaotic, it was a systematic hunt for information about humanity's hidden heritage. The Devourers had been tracking down evidence of the Guardians for thousands of years, consuming every civilization that had preserved records of humanity's true capabilities. They were eliminating anyone who might be able to help humanity remember what they had been before the genetic locks were put in place. Maya's transformation had accelerated their timeline. By awakening her abilities, they had confirmed that the legends were true. Now they would focus their entire force on finding and destroying every human in the galaxy before more Guardians could awaken. Unless Maya stopped them here and now. Her consciousness focused on the quantum patterns that allowed the Devourers to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The creatures used exotic energy fields to phase through normal matter, but those same fields could be disrupted by properly applied quantum interference. Maya began to generate harmonic frequencies that resonated with the Devourers' dimensional anchors, slowly destabilizing their ability to maintain cohesion across multiple realities. The aliens noticed the interference immediately. Their flowing forms began to fluctuate and distort as Maya's quantum manipulation disrupted their exotic matter matrices. Several of the smaller devourers simply vanished, their dimensional existence unraveling as they lost cohesion across parallel realities. Impossible, the lead creature communicated, its thoughts now tinged with something that might have been alarm. You are manipulating quantum substrates directly. This capability was not present in your initial genetic scan. Maya's abilities were continuing to evolve even as she used them. Each application of her awakened powers unlocked additional genetic sequences, revealing new capabilities that had been dormant in her DNA. She was becoming more than just an awakened human, she was transforming into something unprecedented, a guardian whose potential exceeded anything in her species' recorded history. Her consciousness reached out to the cargo in her ship's hold, interfacing directly with the genetic samples that Dr. Vasquez had been trying to deliver. With her enhanced understanding of human genetic structure, Maya could see exactly how the unlocking sequences worked and how to modify them for maximum effectiveness. The samples contained enough material to awaken every human in the galaxy, but, in their current form, they would need to be physically distributed to have any effect. Maya's awakened abilities allowed her to do something the original researchers had never imagined. She could transmit the genetic activation sequences directly through quantum entanglement, bypassing the need for physical contact entirely. Every human consciousness was already connected through the quantum substrate that linked all sentient life. Maya could trace those connections across vast distances, touching the sleeping genetic potential in billions of her fellow humans with nothing more than focused intention. But, awakening her entire species would take time and concentration, leaving her vulnerable to the devourers surrounding her ship. She needed to eliminate the immediate threat before she could focus on the larger task of restoring humanity's guardian heritage. Maya's ship began to move in ways that defied conventional physics. Instead of using engines to push against space, the transformed vessel simply shifted its position through dimensional manipulation. Maya could relocate herself anywhere within the solar system instantly, appearing in one location while simultaneously existing in others. The devourers tried to follow her movements, but their own dimensional abilities were crude compared to Maya's naturally evolved capabilities. They could phase through matter and exist in multiple realities, but they couldn't match the fluid grace with which Maya moved between quantum states. Maya's first attack was subtle, a carefully modulated energy pulse that resonated with the frequency patterns holding the devourer's exotic matter together. The wave passed through normal spacetime without affecting anything else, but, where it touched the alien creatures, their dark forms began to unravel. 3 of the smaller devourers simply ceased to exist, their dimensional anchors severed by Maya's quantum manipulation. The larger entities managed to maintain cohesion, but their forms flickered and distorted as they struggled to stabilize their exotic matter matrices. The lead devourer's response was immediate and overwhelming. Dozens of tendrils lashed out from its core, each one carrying enough destructive force to crack a planet's crust. But the tendrils passed harmlessly through the space where Maya's ship appeared to be, touching nothing but empty vacuum. Maya had learned to exist in quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent until she chose to collapse her wave function into a specific reality. She could attack from any dimension while remaining untouchable in others, making her effectively invulnerable to conventional assault. Her counterattack came from directions the devourers couldn't even perceive. Maya struck through dimensional layers that existed outside their awareness, targeting the quantum foundations of their existence with precisely calibrated energy patterns. Each attack unraveled more of their exotic matter structure, slowly but inexorably destroying the alien entities from the inside out. The battle took place on levels of reality that had no names in any known language. Maya fought with weapons made of pure consciousness, wielding forces that existed before matter and energy had separated into distinct phenomena. She was not just defending herself, she was expressing the accumulated rage of every civilization the devourers had consumed, channeling the righteous fury of countless extinct species through her awakened genetic heritage. The aliens realized too late that they had made a critical error in judgment. By awakening Maya's abilities, they had created something they couldn't control or comprehend, a guardian operating at full potential, armed with capabilities that exceeded their own by several orders of magnitude. One by one, the devourers began to fall. Their dark forms collapsed into quantum static as Maya's attacks severed their connection to the dimensional substrates that sustained their existence. The creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millions of years were being systematically destroyed by a single awakened human who had been nothing more than a quiet freight hauler just hours before. But Maya's victory came at a cost. Each use of her abilities sent ripples through the quantum network connecting all devourers across the galaxy. The destruction of the creatures surrounding her ship was being observed and analyzed by thousands of their kind scattered throughout known space. Humanity's moment of surprise was ending. The Devourers now knew that the Guardians had returned, and they would marshal their entire force to prevent any more humans from awakening to their true potential. Maya had won this battle, but the war for the galaxy's survival was just beginning. And she was still the only Guardian standing between the Devourers and the complete extinction of her species. As the last of the alien creatures around her ship dissolved into quantum foam, Maya turned her attention to the task that would determine the fate of every human in the galaxy. It was time to wake up her entire species and remind the universe why humanity had once been respected as the ultimate protectors of all sentient life. The genetic activation sequences in her cargo hold began to resonate with harmonies that existed beyond normal spacetime, preparing to spread across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds through the quantum substrate that connected all consciousness. Maya's transformation from simple freight hauler to cosmic guardian was complete. Now it was time for humanity to reclaim its destiny. Maya floated in the silence of space, surrounded by the dissipating quantum residue of the destroyed Devourers, her consciousness still reeling from the magnitude of what she had become. The wandering star hung motionless among the debris of the research station, its transformed hull shimmering with energies that existed outside normal physics. Through her enhanced awareness, Maya could perceive the ripples her victory had sent through the Devourer network: alarm, confusion, and something that might have been fear spreading across thousands of alien minds scattered throughout the galaxy. She had perhaps hours before the full weight of the Devourer fleet descended on this system, drawn by the destruction of their advance scouts. But those hours would be enough to change everything. Maya's consciousness expanded outward, following the quantum threads that connected every human mind across the galaxy. She could feel them out there, billions of her fellow humans living their ordinary lives on hundreds of worlds, completely unaware of the cosmic threat bearing down on them or the incredible heritage locked away in their DNA. Farmers on agricultural worlds, miners in asteroid belts, scientists on research stations, children playing in orbital habitats, all of them carrying the dormant genetic potential that could transform them into guardians capable of protecting entire civilizations. The activation sequences in her cargo hold resonated with harmonies that existed beyond the normal flow of time, preparing to spread across faster-than-light communication networks that operated through quantum entanglement. Maya could transmit the genetic unlocking codes directly to every human consciousness simultaneously, awakening her entire species in a single coordinated moment. But she hesitated, remembering the images she had seen of what humans became when their full potential was unleashed without proper preparation. The Guardian abilities came with immense responsibility and equally immense risk. Some humans would be unable to control their awakened powers, becoming threats to themselves and everyone around them. Others might be consumed by the cosmic awareness that came with Guardian status, losing their humanity in the vastness of universal consciousness. Her ancestors had locked away these abilities for good reasons. The decision to restore them couldn't be taken lightly, even with the Devourer threat bearing down on the galaxy. Maya's enhanced senses detected movement in the quantum dimensions around her ship. Something was approaching, not another Devourer, but something else entirely. A presence that felt familiar despite being completely unknown, carrying patterns of consciousness that resembled her own awakened state. Through the exotic matter phases that surrounded her transformed vessel, a figure began to materialize. It appeared to be human, but possessed the same multidimensional awareness that Maya had recently acquired. An elderly man with kind eyes and an expression of infinite patience, wearing clothes that seemed to shift between different historical periods as she watched. Maya Chen, the figure said, its voice reaching her through quantum resonance rather than sound waves. My name is David Sterling. I was the last guardian to awaken before the locks were put in place, roughly 3 million years ago by your current calendar. Maya's consciousness recoiled in shock. 3 million years? But the figure felt completely human, carrying genetic patterns that were unmistakably from her own species despite the impossible timespan. You exist outside normal time, she realized, her enhanced awareness allowing her to perceive the temporal distortions surrounding the mysterious guardian. David nodded approvingly. The guardian state allows consciousness to exist independently of linear temporal flow. I have been waiting in dimensional suspension for the moment when humanity would face another existential threat and require guidance from someone who had already walked this path. Maya felt relief flood through her consciousness. She wasn't alone. Someone who understood what she was experiencing, someone who could help guide her through the overwhelming responsibility of awakening an entire species, had been waiting for this moment. The Devourers, Maya said. How do we stop them? We don't, David replied, and Maya's hope began to turn to despair. You do. The Guardian protocols were never designed for multiple awakened humans to operate simultaneously in normal spacetime. The quantum interference between awakened consciousnesses can be catastrophic if not properly managed. Only one Guardian can actively function at a time while the others remain in dimensional suspension. Maya's enhanced awareness processed the implications. She would have to face the entire Devourer threat alone, without the support of other awakened humans. The genetic activation sequences in her cargo hold would remain unused, her species would stay locked in their peaceful but limited state, and she would bear sole responsibility for protecting billions of lives. That's not entirely accurate, David continued, sensing her despair. The Guardian state allows for different approaches to species protection. You can awaken selected individuals, perhaps a few dozen at most, to serve as regional guardians while maintaining oversight coordination. Think of them as extensions of your consciousness rather than independent operators. Maya's hope began to return. A few dozen awakened humans, carefully chosen and properly trained, could coordinate the defense of human space while she dealt with the larger Devourer threat. But choosing who to awaken would require incredible wisdom and judgment. She would be determining the fate of individuals who had never asked for such responsibility. How do I choose? She asked. David's expression grew thoughtful. The same way the original Guardians were chosen, through character, compassion, and strength of will rather than intelligence or physical capability. The genetic potential exists in all humans, but the ability to wield that potential responsibly exists in only a few. Maya's consciousness reached out through the quantum networks connecting human civilization, scanning billions of minds for the qualities that would make suitable guardians. She found them in unexpected places: a teacher on a frontier world who had spent her life protecting children from natural disasters, a cargo pilot who had repeatedly risked his life to deliver medical supplies to plague-stricken colonies, a scientist who had sacrificed her career to expose corporate pollution that was poisoning entire ecosystems. None of them were warriors in the traditional sense, but all of them possessed the moral courage and selfless dedication that made true guardians. Maya began the delicate process of awakening their genetic potential, transmitting carefully modulated activation sequences that would unlock their abilities gradually over several hours rather than all at once. You learn quickly, David observed. The gentle awakening process will allow them to adapt to their new capabilities without losing their essential humanity. But, remember, once awakened, they can never return to their previous existence. You are changing their lives forever. Maya felt the weight of that responsibility as she continued her work. Each person she awakened would become something beyond normal human experience, capable of incredible feats but forever separated from ordinary humanity. They would gain the power to protect entire worlds but lose the simple pleasures of unremarkable existence. It was a terrible gift to impose on anyone, but necessary for the survival of their species. As Maya's carefully chosen guardians began to awaken across human space, she felt their consciousness joining her awareness through quantum entanglement. 24 individuals scattered across dozens of star systems, each one experiencing the same overwhelming expansion of perception that Maya had undergone hours earlier. But, unlike her abrupt transformation under Devourer influence, their awakening was gradual and supported by her guidance. She could feel their initial confusion and fear, followed by growing understanding as their enhanced awareness revealed the scope of the threat facing their species. One by one, they accepted their new roles as guardians, setting aside their former lives to take up the cosmic responsibility of protecting humanity from extinction. Maya's consciousness touched each of them individually, sharing knowledge and providing guidance as they learned to control their awakened abilities. Sarah Martinez, the teacher from the frontier world, discovered she could manipulate gravity fields to protect her students from seismic disasters. James Park, the cargo pilot, found that his ship could now phase through hostile fire while delivering aid to besieged colonies. Dr. Catherine Walsh, the environmental scientist, learned to cleanse polluted ecosystems with direct molecular manipulation. Each guardian developed abilities suited to their personality and the needs of their region, becoming specialized protectors rather than general-purpose weapons. Together, they formed a network of awakened humans capable of coordinating the defense of all human territories while Maya dealt with the larger cosmic threat. David Stirling observed Maya's work with evident satisfaction. "You have chosen well. Your guardians will protect human space while you face the devourers. But, remember, they are extensions of your consciousness, not independent operators. If you fall, they will lose their awakened state and revert to normal human limitations." The pressure of that responsibility was almost overwhelming, but Maya accepted it as she had accepted everything else that had been thrust upon her in the past few hours. She was no longer Maya Chen, simple freight hauler. She was the prime guardian, the focal point of humanity's defense against cosmic annihilation. Her enhanced senses detected the approach of massive presences at the edge of the solar system. The Devourer main fleet was arriving, hundreds of the alien entities drawn by the destruction of their scouts. They came in ships that defied description, vessels made of the same flowing darkness as their creators, capable of existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Maya's consciousness expanded to encompass the entire Tau Ceti system, preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of every sentient being in the galaxy. Her ship, no longer truly the wandering star but something unprecedented in the universe, began to glow with inner fire as she drew energy from quantum sources that existed outside normal spacetime. The final battle was about to begin, and Maya faced it with the knowledge that she was not just fighting for humanity's survival, but for the preservation of everything beautiful and unique in the galaxy. The Devourers represented consumption without creation, knowledge without wisdom, power without purpose. They were the antithesis of everything the Guardians had been created to protect. David Stirling's presence began to fade as he prepared to return to his dimensional suspension. "Remember, Maya, you are not fighting this battle alone. Every human you have awakened, every civilization the Devourers have consumed, every life that hangs in the balance, they all stand with you. You carry the hopes and dreams of countless beings who believed that goodness could triumph over darkness." As the first Devourer ships entered the system's outer boundaries, Maya felt the quantum threads connecting her to her awakened guardian's pulse with shared determination. 24 enhanced humans across the galaxy began their own battles to protect human colonies from Devourer advance scouts, coordinated by Maya's consciousness but fighting with their own courage and skill. Maya's transformation was complete. She had become something that existed beyond the normal boundaries of space, time, and physics, a guardian capable of protecting entire galaxies from existential threats. The quiet freight hauler who had simply wanted to complete one more delivery contract had evolved into humanity's greatest weapon and ultimate protector. The galaxy was about to witness the return of the Guardians, and the Devourers were about to learn why some species were never meant to be consumed. Maya Chen had kept to herself for most of her life, but when battle exposed her true power, she became the focal point of a cosmic war that would determine whether creation or destruction would define the universe's future. The final phase of humanity's awakening had begun, and Maya was ready to remind the cosmos why her species had once been revered as the ultimate guardians of all life.